Should you use HCG on cycle? In this video, I'll cover how it works, its benefits and why you might want to use it, the drawbacks, the dosing, and other key considerations to keep in mind if you want to add it in. So sit tight, let's get into it. Hey guys, a viewer asked me to make a video about how to use HCG on cycle. So today, I'm doing just that. Using HCG on cycle or with TRT, it's somewhat of a recent trend within the last 10 years or so, I would say. It's increasingly becoming more and more common, and for good reason, which I'll get into. But first, I'll explain what HCG actually does and how it works in the body. HCG is an abundant hormone in women in the early stages of pregnancy, but in men, it exists only in trace amounts. So if it exists only in trace amounts naturally, it's not that important, right? It can't be. Well, HCG mimics and plays the same biological role as luteinizing hormone, which stimulates the Leydig cells in the testicles to produce testosterone and sperm. I wonder how many times I'm going to say testicles in this video. Now, the problem is, let's say you're on cycle and your HTPA shuts down because your body detects that it has an adequate amount of androgens, because obviously if you're on cycle, you're adding them in exogenously, right? Now the problem is, because your body detects that it has an adequate amount of androgens, this results in a vast reduction in gonadotropin releasing hormone, which results in the pituitary gland not releasing enough luteinizing hormone to stimulate the Leydig cells in the testicles. Okay, so you're on a cycle, you're getting super physiological amounts of androgens. Why does it matter if you're not producing your own? Well, because the signal between your brain and your testicles has essentially been severed, this causes them to slowly atrophy. And it's speculated that prolonged periods of shutdown can cause oxidative stress and scar tissue formation, which can lead to permanent damage and possibly compromise long-term fertility. Not only that, but testicular shutdown and atrophy is very often accompanied with decreased orgasm sensation and reduced penile sensitivity. So it makes you wonder if there's some sort of nerve degradation going on there too. So by using HCG on cycle, you allow that signal from your brain to your testicles to continue as normal. Another thing to consider is that when your HTPA is shut down, another protein called steroidogenic acute regulatory protein is also greatly diminished. And it's this protein that's responsible for turning cholesterol into endogenous steroids. Okay, so why is that so important? Well, the surplus of cholesterol that isn't being used as building blocks to create hormones is left to circulate and may increase the risk of plaque formation in arteries. This could be why 19-nor derivatives like trenbolone are considered to be more cardiotoxic and destructive to lipids than other steroids. Because they're so suppressive, even with HCG in the mix, you're still going to be shut down, and as a result have less of this protein to free up cholesterol to transform into hormones. Another key point is that your HTPA is also responsible for creating neurosteroids, namely DHEA and pregnenolone. These play key roles in mood, libido, and a general sense of well-being. If you want me to make a more in-depth video about these neurosteroids that get affected by HTPA shutdown, let me know. Anecdotally, there's a lot of evidence for HCG improving mood and libido as well. This guy on Reddit goes, I was on 250, I guess HCG a week, noticed a bit of shrinkage and E2 is fine, so I doubled it to 250 twice a week. And then he says, my orgasms are awesome now. Once a week was little to no change in size, ejaculate or feeling, but huge difference in libido. Twice libido actually calmed down a little. I guess he means twice a week, 250. Actually calmed down a little, but I can survive a day without sex, which is nice. Orgasms are weird, but much better. I feel like I'm finishing seconds before I actually do, so orgasm time is doubled, and I think my balls are back to 100% now. Another guy on Reddit here, for me personally, on 50 IU 3 times a week, the good, brought my balls back to normal size. Wow, really? On only 150 IU a week? Okay, I guess he's only on TRT. Increased sensitivity by a lot, load size close to normal, increased my flaccid size by about 1.5 inches. That's interesting. The bad has caused me to retain water. Estrogen is fine at 39. Increased sensitivity a little bit too much. I don't last as long as I used to. Very interesting. This guy goes, I blasted and cruised for 2.5 years before adding HCG in the mix. Sex drive and orgasms are better with HCG. Testicles feel fuller. I get that sensation of boiling up in my balls pre-orgasm that I hadn't noticed I'd missed. Load size is back to normal, and that increased the pleasure of the orgasm for me. I've had a vasectomy for years, so I never cared about fertility with HCG. I can't speak to any kind of sense of well-being. I always feel pretty good, except when I don't, lack of sleep, sick, etc. I guess that's understandable. I started blasting 500 IU 3 times a week, so 1,500 IU a week, just to get things back to normal. Now I'll switch to 250 IU 2 or 3 times a week and freeze each vial's worth of slim pins. That's exactly what I recommend. If you want to know how to mix and store HCG, check out my video here. It goes into all that. All right, that's some interesting anecdotes from Reddit. I would say that my experience just mirrors those. You know, orgasms are better, my flaccid penis size is bigger, penile sensitivity is increased, my mood's better, my sense of well-being's better. Yeah, so for me, it's a double thumbs up. If you're planning on doing a PCT and you're not planning to blast and cruise, then using HCG on cycle is going to give you a much easier time doing a PCT, because your testicles are not going to have to go from 0 to 100, because you've kept that signal from your HTPA to your Leydig cells alive while you've been on cycle. Okay, I want to talk about 19-NOR derivatives and HCG a little bit more. Here's a personal anecdote of mine about just how suppressive they are. Just this past summer, I did a cutting cycle of testosterone and masteron. The doses weren't massive, it was 250 milligrams of each, 250 test, 250 masteron. The goal was to just preserve size, and as I got leaner, added a nice hard cosmetic appearance with the masteron. During this time, I was on 750 IU of HCG a week, split into 3 injections of 250 IU, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. This kept everything functional, testicles remained normal size, libido was great, orgasm sensation was great. Now, after this cycle ended, I dropped back to a cruise dose of, I believe it was 140 milligrams of test and 60 milligrams of masteron per week, still using the HCG. Then, as an experiment, I added in 70 milligrams of trenbolone acetate per week for 4 weeks. And by the end of the second week, it was if I'd stopped responding to HCG. I started to have a dull ache in my testicles and my semen volume had halved. And to me, that was just first-hand evidence of the suppressive power that 19-NORs have, even with HCG. And that was a very, very conservative dose of Tren too, 70 milligrams a week, 10 milligrams a day. It's not like I was blasting 350 milligrams like some guys. So for that reason, if you're using 19-NORs, I would say you've got 2 options. You can either up your dose of HCG, or you can save it until the 19-NORs are fully out of your system and then try and recover your HTPA. With 19-NORs, instead of the HCG, I would just supplement DHEA and pregnenolone instead. So there's actually some differences between your endogenous luteinizing hormone and exogenously administered HCG. Endogenous luteinizing hormone has a half-life of roughly 20 to 30 minutes. And that's because it's released in pulses when your HTPA detects that it needs to create sex hormones. On the other hand, injectable HCG has a much longer half-life of 24 to 36 hours and a total life of up to 5 to 6 days, depending on genetic response and an individual's metabolism. Because the half-life is so long, the LHCGR, which is the luteinizing hormone choriogonadotropin receptor, that's a mouthful, that becomes overstimulated, resulting in G protein downregulation. The G protein is the signal that's sent to the testicles from the LHCGR once HCG has bound to it. To what extent exogenous HCG causes this process of downregulation seems to be highly individualistic, but generally people fall into one of two groups. Group 1 have no issues using HCG continuously throughout an AAS cycle as long as there's no 19-nor derivatives present. Group 2, which is unfortunately me, have most success cycling HCG. Personally, I'll do a 4-week on, 4-week off protocol. That's what works for me to keep my body responding to HCG as it should by allowing the G protein to upregulate during the 4 weeks that I'm off. Okay, so let's talk about dosing HCG then. I would say that the minimum amount you can get away with is 500 IU a week, but a more common dose is 750 to 1000 IU per week, with the shots split evenly throughout. So if you're on 500, you might want to do 250 Monday and 250 Thursday. If you're on 750, you might want to do 250 Monday, Wednesday, Friday. If you're on 1000, you might want to do 500 Monday and 500 Thursday. I've got a guide on how to mix and store HCG on my channel, so check that out. All right, let's talk about using HCG in a PCT then. Well, it depends what compounds you're using and what esters you're using. For example, if you're using short esters like propionates, for example, if you're on test prop and mass prop, you can start HCG a week after your last pin of those. If you're on longer esters, you want to wait about 4 weeks for those to fully clear before starting the HCG. As far as dosing the HCG as part of a PCT, it generally wants to be much higher to give yourself the best chance of recovery possible. So I would recommend 2,000 to 3,000 IU a week. Now, if you've been using a 19-nor like tren, I would drop the tren and go back to a bare minimum test base for about 8 weeks just to let the tren fully clear. Well, not fully clear, but get as much of it out of your system as possible because the metabolites stick around for a long time. So say you drop the tren, you're on a test base of 150 milligrams a week. You would drop the test base, wait another 4 weeks, and then start the HCG. That's to let the tren and all of its metabolites fully clear. While there's certainly more benefits than downsides to HCG, there's a couple of things to bear in mind. One being that HCG can disproportionately increase estrogen to testosterone. So if you're already a high aromatizer, that's just something to keep an eye on. To adjust for this, you can lower your testosterone dose to account for the increased estrogen caused by the HCG, taking more AI, or adding something like Primo in that's gonna lower your estrogen. And then you've got the cost of the HCG itself. Well, it's quite cheap. A vial of 5,000 IU here in the UK costs about £20. So while it is quite cheap, it's still an extra expense on top of everything else. You've also got the preparation. While it doesn't take long, it's still a pain in the ass at the end of the day and something else that needs doing. All right, so how do you make the personal judgment call to use HCG on cycle or not? Well, it's a tough one, but I've put a flowchart together to help make your decision a little bit easier. Okay, so starting off, do you experience testicular atrophy or discomfort on cycle? Let's assume you do. Okay, are you using a 19-nor derivative like tren? If you are, save your HCG for PCT or up the dose of your HCG. If you're not using a 19-nor, do you have decreased sexual function and or libido on cycle? If yes, you should use HCG. If not, then is maintaining testicular function and fertility important to you? If it is, use HCG. If not, and if everything else is fine, your libido's good, your drive's good, your mood's good, then I wouldn't worry about it. So that's it, guys. I hope this was informative. There's a written post going into all of this stuff linked in the description on my blog, so check that out. Aside from that, thanks for watching. Like, drop me a comment, subscribe, check out my blog, enhanceplayer.com, and I'll see you next time.